Neil at work. Neil, do you want to say something? All right.
Let's have a great event, guys.
All right. Piyush, say something for the camera.
Hello, testing. 1, 2, 3.
What are you going to do today?
I'm going to be a facilitator.
All right.
Hopefully.
Excited?
Yes.
Why don't we get the filmmaker on film?
Yeah, basically,
Sure.
let's try it out.
So interview.
All right.
Somik Raha, how do you feel about this event? This is the first event of the winter quarter for Sarvodaya.
It's going to warm up the winter.
And what do you expect the reaction will be from people about the film?
I hope they'll be speechless.
Wow. But they have a discussion to do, so they can't really be speechless.
Well, it would be fantastic if everyone's so moved they say we have nothing to say.
Wow. And just 20
give
minutes
love.
of silence.
20 minutes of silence.
Hey, I couldn't have said it better myself.
But if they give love with words, that's we'll
We'll
accept
take that.
that as well. Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you.
What do you have to say about the event?
I'm so excited for this event, and I'm glad I could help be a part of it. And this is embarrassing. I hope this doesn't go anywhere. Do you want me to?
Michael, say something for the camera.
We are here to begin removing ourselves from the patterns of violence that have destroyed the possible relationships that we've got. So, let's see what happens after.
Come. Fahad, come on over.
Okay.
How do you feel?
Say
Wet.
Say something for the camera. This is before the event begins.
Oh, I'm excited despite the rain and the weather that we are doing this event. I'm a little tired at the end of the week, but I think this is a perfect time for such an event. Is that?
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for braving this interesting weather and still making it here. This is an incredible event for all of us. When we first conceived of this, we were surprised with how many organizations came forward to support and make this happen. So we have a whole bunch of organizations, Sarvodaya, and we have Pakistanis at Stanford, the Stanford India Association, the Muslim Students Awareness Network, the Hindu Students Council, Stanford Faith, Center for South Asia. Am I missing anyone?
You said Pakistani Stanford.
Yeah.
Did you say Sarvodaya?
Yeah, we also got an email from somebody who said this is such a great idea, we want to sponsor it. I'm like, who's we? And it turns out there's a Bay Area group, I think there's a Pakistani group who wanted to help with this as well. So we were good on funding, but it's incredible to see how many people thought this was an important event to have, and I'd just like to honor that space from which we've come together here. So that's something we'd like to celebrate. So this film is a very intense film. I've seen it maybe 6 or 7 times now, and every time I just can't imagine that this film could have been made. It leaves me speechless for a while. I should warn you in advance that it might be provocative, but keep your heart open. It will ultimately uplift and really inspire. So. And if it shocks, it will shock evenly. There's just like Kabir, the film doesn't spare any one side. So there will be some consolation there. The format of tonight is we will finish the screening and then we will break up into groups, and we have a plan of action for that. We have facilitators who will take you to different rooms. So we have smaller groups. Everyone can get to reflect in a smaller space, and then we'll come back in to share some larger group reflections, and then we'll have dinner together. So that's the plan, and we should start the movie. Just so you know, in case you need to use the restroom, that's going left, and then make another left, and you should find restrooms there.
Originally from Bangkok. Oh yeah? Yes. I was a Stanford from 2002.
It's a very trivial issue. What I believed was that Sufism is actually somehow very less visible in India, and I thought it's more dominant in Pakistan, whereas what I saw from the movie was that it's not very easy to find Sufism prevailing in many parts in Pakistan as well. But I think Sufism is in a way very very closely related to what Kabir had in mind and what Kabir's vision was. And regarding all these sort of orthodox attitudes that we saw from the movie from different people, like people who were in Ayodhya talking about Babri Masjid, or people who were on that bus when they were traveling from Wagah border back towards somewhere else, some location. The kind of things that you heard people say, I've been hearing that all the time. So my parents are very very orthodox Hindus, and I've heard such statements from them. I've heard statements from their friends. I've heard statements all around me. So I know this thing exists. Even though you might not see this in students who are here at Stanford, you might not see this in the educated community, because I think most of the people at least these days, the people who I am friends with, the people who I know, have moved on from all these sort of basically pointless ideas, and I've started realizing what that these things really need to nowhere. But the sad part is that's only a very small fraction still. Most of the fraction of in today's population still believe in the kind of things that we saw from people in the
was like how
in a way,
burn your home.
so as I said, I'm a very staunch atheist, and I actually often try to go around telling people to think on those lines, and especially like this was very close to me because like you all have heard of the 26/11 attacks in Mumbai, right? The Taj attacks and all those things, and a lot of my friends were, none of them was injured or.
This is the first time I watched this film, and it has inspired me. It has made an impression in many ways that I can probably express now in a few minutes. Probably the more I reflect on it, the more ideas and thoughts and lessons I can drive. To sum it up in probably a few lines, I would say the movie has given me the realization that back home people are the same, be it India or Pakistan, basically everybody is the same, and people are innocent for whatever reason. In some situations, the ideas that they portrayed and the kind of arguments that they had were a little innocent, probably because of lack of education. But on the whole, most people showed their wisdom, which is probably inbuilt in our culture back there, and things like change of guards between, on the border of India and Pakistan. It was very interesting to watch that. And most of all, this movie has it has given a kind of path to a thought that I had in mind since long. I always thought there should be some way to channelize what we grew up with, the kind of culture, the kind of philosophical thinking that we grew up with back home. Somehow we should channelize it since we are here, and provide a way to pass it on to other people, both in this generation and the ones to follow. Starting point, maybe I should follow it up from here. Probably acquire more knowledge myself, equip myself with, say, more Kabir ke dohe, or different moral verses, and that will be a good starting point. And the more I reflect, probably the more I can think of. So this is it.
We can discuss once we are all done. Yeah, you can.
My name is Sana, and I'm a student here. And I've never watched this movie before. And honestly speaking, I never even heard of Kabir before. So this movie was like kind of, like an eye-opener. So what I found interesting about it was I love the music, as you mentioned. I thought that the commonalities in the music between both, either side of the border was really interesting. One thing that I noticed was that, the way Indians and Pakistanis define themselves is often in opposition to each other. Like they say, okay, fine. Like there's one part which they were saying, that they're Muslims, so they do everything opposite to the way we do it. And it's really ironic that you guys were talking about the conversation that they had while coming back on the bus from Wagah, and I attended the ceremony from the other side. And they say the same things. We say the same things. We say, ours, their flag went down lower than ours. Their flag is bigger than ours. We say the same things, and it's odd because on both sides people are saying the same things. On both sides they define themselves in opposition to the other, but they're just the same. And I just don't know how, people don't. I mean, like for example, in the Wagah ceremony, they stare across the gate as if they're, they're like, oh my God, look, there's an Indian. I've heard that from people around. Oh my God, that's an Indian. Dekho, dekho. And it's a very strange feeling to see that. But that's the thing, because there's very little exposure among. I mean, okay, maybe we're a very different audience and we can identify with. We spend a lot of time with Indians. Personally, I've been to India twice. I've seen all the shrines and stuff personally myself. But for the common Pakistani or the common Indian, they don't have that interaction. So it's like a mystique for them what's across the border. But what's ironic is that the mystique is something that they build up themselves, and they build it up by saying, they're so different from us. But it's really not the case. It is really not the case. Like, I mean, okay, this movie showed this share, like appreciation for Kabir. But it's at an even more basic level. It doesn't have to be a 16th century poet or something that they share, It's just their emotions and the way they react to things that's just the same. And I think that's a better judge of identity. It's not like what poets we share or what philosophies we believe in. It's our everyday attitudes, how we go about thinking and doing stuff. And I don't know how people are supposed to understand that. The boundaries are not because of, okay, they're cultural boundaries, but we all share a culture. We do. And, it's culture, it's attitudes, it's our day-to-day lives. That's what makes our identity. And I think that's something that, I think common Indian and Pakistani, I don't mean that in a bad sense, but everyday person should sort of, if there was some way they could realize that. Because they're creating a mystique themselves, the whole idea. They've never probably interacted with like an Indian or a Pakistani, or a Pakistani interact with an Indian. It just doesn't happen. And yet they feel that they have such a body of knowledge to draw on, they're like this, they're like that, and, they seem to have this expertise, but they've never actually had real interaction. So, I don't know, I just found that interesting. It's ironic that they're so much the same, but they themselves define themselves as being different. I just found it interesting. It's a good movie, very thoughtful.
Than to understand the gist of it.
Right.
So it's like the idea, I think that is what is being referred to than what one might understand as religion, as you say, in terms of that thing of search for love as religion, if you like. As like Muktiar Ali in that video says, like, I don't read the religious books, but rather I take up the music, etc. My dad started reading the book. And, he has his own way of thinking about the religion. It's like,
No, I in fact, I love what you just said, because I think towards the end as well, that other guy, the Pakistani person, he just goes like, how does he talk about it? Like the way he introduces Kabir, right? Like how he goes about discussing
I know him
it was so intense, right? There was just like
passion.
And there's a quote there as well. He goes, the profession versus passion thing, right? He talks about that. He says like,
what was it?
I don't know if he was just mixing up a whole bunch of English words, but he was basically like, he was saying, look, you're trying to make this like your profession, right? The moment the mullahs and the priests and stuff, for them it's a profession. It's devoid of any passion. And when there's,
it's like the point. I'm sorry to interrupt. Like the point he was trying to make at the very end, right? Make this not only a single project that you're doing right now, it's a large project.
It's a life. That is nice.
Sweet. I think the way it's, facilitator brief said.
The word Jew post-1947 is this large identity vocabulary. Like when they talk to me, they make a pun and like make a joke, and they got the word. So what are identities? Like what is there like in the India?
Programs that they're doing it, they're telling them that these are different sets of people, and the way they've gotten to these people is not by religion. And every time it's like religion and they believe this. What they've done now is that, you can understand those people for the religion, you can find all those common things, but those people are out to get you, and they're out to get you. It's just that's the same. The
main reason of it was that
take it back to World War II.
where they wear brown shirts and all these different kind of things. It's just the same kind of thing, but they say that, okay, you've got dangerous people that are near you and around you.
I think Islam is a
and they might be your friends, and they might be this and that, and they're out to get you. They just make up all these stories that they're out to get you because of this, because of that.
So
biggest reason is that they want Pakistan
but
back. They want
I don't think
want
culturally we are very
greater
different
India.
actually.
I
think
it's very
the
different.
I don't think this is culture is following only some rituals. Culture is when I
There is a
when
chance.
when you come to my home, how do I engage?
There's a
When you have a
chance
problem,
that
how do I approach
it
it?
will become one
How do
country
we
again.
think about dance, food, culture, organizing events? I don't think there will be a 50 years distance more than the time periods. And in this era where decisions are still very much permeable through TVs and internet and everything, people are going to
It's the government.
there might be rituals because of the religion or some specific region based. Even in India, you have such a vast diversity of rituals that people don't believe one thing is there, another thing is there. So I don't think
They want their own
yeah,
power,
religion
they want,
could be a different part
and so
of it.
the only way they can stay in
But
power
I don't
is
think
to,
culturally
you know,
there could be a lot of difference
plant these seeds.
at the level of approaching human interaction, the way people
There are some examples in the movie.
the trivialities of life or the occasions of life.
You know, for
That's what
example,
I believe that there is no
when they broke down the mosque.
So what you're saying is that
I think
religion
all
has in a way
come down to the generation,
influenced the
that
identity
strong feeling,
of
and
Pakistan and
eventually it
India,
happened.
but humanism should prevail eventually.
I'm not saying should it should be, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's for everyone in the world, it's not just India, but in any country. That although that the religious identity was the biggest reason for Pakistan to become but I think at a cultural level, I don't think it is different. It's just that obviously people at the top and political level try to bring out those differences for whatever reason that I'm not.
Like every month you have at least one bomb blast.
I don't
that will
think
kill a bunch of civilians for no freaking
different and at the same time
It happens all the time.
religious, but at the same time I would accept that religious identity is a big reason why the things are the way they are. Not to take a judgmental viewpoint on this.
I mean, there will be people with their own agenda. It's just that some people
Blame are indeed the ones who are causing the trouble.
Really, there are no facts to prove either or, but
I mean, everybody's heard about the slaughter that happened after.
I think the media has a lot to do with it. And, you know, once a rumor starts, it just snowballs and builds into a point where it turns into a virtual fact.
Yeah. I mean, there are such groups on both sides.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There are stronger groups, like there are a lot of legal organizations that
British people out, not
which spread the same thing, like same
you know, that's my
It's not
understanding,
that.
you know. I know, I often
So was
think
the movie we
about
just saw
feel
sort of
acceptance,
indirectly commenting on all of
feel-
that?
There are a lot
It
of
was,
Muslim people in
and
India also.
it's just my opinion, I'm not sure, it was commenting on it, it was commenting on it in a very nice way, it was a very well done film, I must say, it was a very well done film. However,
I work for India Community
it was
Center for
trying
one
to
year. That's
hit
Al-Qaeda's,
a target
organization.
that is not the
And,
source of the problem. It was trying to hit religion and it was trying to hit
It
ideology,
started
and
by
that it's the
Indians,
idea,
but
it's not where the
Hindus
problem
and
is coming
Muslims
from.
are equally
So,
involved in it, and
Where do you think the
it's really a
problem is coming
pleasant thing
from?
to see.
I think it's
not
the
like,
political
oh, this is a
problem,
Hindu
and
institution
just the
or
demonizing of the other side.
religion, they're really wanting to stay out of the religion.
You know, people who live,
And
it's a very long border, that what we saw was just one, you know, this celebrated border. The Wagah border is not the only portal from, you know, one side to the other.
I feel
I have been
more
to
of that, and my addition
the
to
northern
this would
regions
be a
where people are
question to
really
you young
on the border,
people,
just
would
10
you
miles from the border,
you know,
they live there, they have
assuming, you know, you coming from Pakistan.
no reason
have
to
a
think of
Muslim
India as an
religion,
enemy, except that the government says it is your enemy.
What's your name?
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, what, 5 years ago, when there was this, all this media hype going on with, like, you know, Pak India Dosti and all this, these different things. That was really on the hype back then, and everyone loved Indians. And yeah, and now they don't.
You know, but the sad thing is,
belongs to a little
no
bit
matter who
right
you
age
talk
group,
to,
maybe. But what's your
India and Pakistan was one country
if you met
to start
a
with.
non-Jain or non
And most of the people in Pakistan are a relative
would
in
you
India
be open
and vice
to, I
versa.
mean, cross-cultural, how
Yeah.
are these boundaries in young
And it's so sad that this conflict is just going on and on. It's very difficult for people who live in India and Pakistan to even visit each other because of all this.
You know, it's regional because we came from Karachi. I think people from Sindh and Punjab certainly have some connections to India. I'm speaking of the Pakistani
The
side.
kind of culture that we have, families are intricately.
And people from South India probably have no connection to Pakistan. Friends, social, family, nothing. So, you know, the Pashtuns, the frontier, Balochistan, those people don't have any family or generational ties to India. So I think it's reasonable.
That's right. I mean, even in India, like Delhi and all those,
Right.
some
They
of
have
those
some
regions have connections, like
Right.
Rajasthan, if you come down, they come further down. They actually don't understand the problem. They think they know about it is what they see on TV or
And there are so many people came and some they had some, they were searching for themselves.
There is a question came from UK and she explained why he thinks that Christianity, the reading of Bible is
Well, yeah, given
can be the answer to all the questions.
just the number of sects that are within any religion, do you think religions are fated to split up as people try and find their own ways of fulfilling themselves? And, you know, maybe the differences between Hinduism and Islam aren't even great if you look at the differences within each religion.
It's one person.
Shia,
So don't tell the community what you
Hinduism. I mean, there's so many everywhere.
I always expected that planning stands.
Yeah, I think it is human nature to sort of try to sort of get more specific. Like the more similar you are, the more you try to get together. Like, you know, especially in one country where everyone is Indian or everyone is Pakistani or everyone is Bangladeshi. Like, you know, you have a tendency to want to find people more similar to you. But I think for at least for immigrants or something, I think it's easier to form a bond with people just in the area. Like, you know, we don't care, like, not that my family's here, we don't care so much if we mix with, like, Indian people or Pakistani people because they understand our culture, they understand our religion, and so it makes it easier to talk about it, to interact, and I think sometimes that may be a benefit of kind of moving from just one small, close area to somewhere bigger. We can talk more. That's my idea.
No, I agree. I also agree that there's a lot of polarization.
I find it surprising how, you know, religions keep fighting with each other and over such prolonged periods of time. I mean, you talked about 700 years, you know, this kind of movie, people fighting for 700 years. I'd like to think the whole idea of generation gaps should be able to break that war between religions. And I don't know how they manage to sustain it. I mean, it's something we should think about scientifically.
A lot of energy.
When you're born as a child, how do you identify with your religion? I mean,
What happens is that the
how does it happen? How is that chain not being broken over like 700 years? I don't know.
A lot of materialistic, you know, so a lot of so busy with all of that. And then what happens is suddenly something erupts. And then it all comes out. And like in Gujarat, that you know,
Practically, I think
the Godra incident.
I wrote one article on that
That's why
also,
we have to really
that Indian
take proactive
Muslims
steps. Otherwise, it's all lying
should
there and it all erupts.
have leadership of the world. If they have, they have a different, I saw Indonesia also,
like there's more polarization.
if they're more,
What I think is
more
you're
liberal
intelligent, you're more aware
type.
of the world. You're getting all
and if
these
they can
opinions and
associate
viewpoints from different
themselves
people, that's
I
education.
think
with Pakistani
education and
people,
humanity have become two
and
different things.
every one of
A person
them
who's
has
really well
some
educated does not mean that
relatives or the other.
he is a good
Even
human.
Musharraf
And I
was
think
born in Delhi.
that's becoming
And
more and
he-
more acceptable. Back,
he knew
if you go
people.
back a few centuries, the person
The
who was
childhood.
the most educated was the most respected.
And the
his word-
area
like
he
he
went
was
to.
known to be a nobleman.
where he was
That's not the
born.
case anymore. You can be educated, you can make your.
So there's a
way.
people to people.
That's,
I think
that
can
yeah,
develop
a biased citizen need not be educated. Like,
into,
I think
but
that distinction
leaders of
is becoming more.
Islam in India are
What I think of education,
concerned with
what I
their
think is
own,
you're aware
I
of
think,
environments,
economic
the ones that
conditions.
you're sort of exposed to, right?
So
You're
economy
aware of other
improves,
places in the
then
world, you're
we
aware
can
of
work
other beliefs, other thoughts.
for the other.
And I mean, yeah, you can
aspects
have
of it.
like very biased education.
I think the
But
first
to me,
priority
true
is
education is just
For everyone. True.
things that you wouldn't normally, or things that
Good
you
point. I don't think people have much time to think about
just getting
religion
awareness
or,
about other
culture much when you're struggling to survive, when you don't have a house and you don't have food. So
In
it's
1960s,
a good point.
I have actually a question about that then. The song they were singing at the end said that the person who finds the boundless unbounded is the fakir. And in Arabic that means poor person, the beggar. So what do you think that means? I have no
Fakir
idea.
means the one who is a saint.
Okay.
Fakir means not the
That's interesting.
the beggar or something.
So why is the beggar the saint?
He's not held back by anything.
Saint is a beggar.
There's nothing holding him back.
Ironic, isn't it?
They have actually not started
Fakir is
realizing that
the
religion
one
is more important than any other thing.
who has gone beyond this,
Because of the social
beyond everything.
they're still in the poverty.
There were three stages, you said. Fakir was the
Burns his house.
They actually become more and more inclusive and not
he has given up. He has given up all these things. Among the Hindus, they are called sadhus. Sadhu, fakir, is roughly the same.
So why is the person with no possessions, with no home, the holy person?
Well, among the Hindus, they prescribe a stage on the average of 100 years. The first 3 years, the 3 quarters, first quarter is acquisition of knowledge. Second quarter is for economic condition and family life. Third quarter is giving away everything. And fourth quarter is you renounce the whole world. You renounce yourself.
Living, who has been living in India for generations, he's been
I think it's more practical for an Indian Muslim because they're separate. They have a separate culture of their own. They are not like pan-Arabic or anything. They have their own identity. It becomes more and more painful when there is so much terrorism. There is so less terrorism from Indian side, Indian Muslim side, or Indian Muslim. Like an Indian Muslim is equally likely to commit a crime as an Indian Hindu or Indian Christian. So, but still, when he comes to a bigger global stage, he's mixed with the other kind of people, and it becomes.
when the Tamils in Ceylon, Sri Lanka,
They do statistical studies.
Exactly. You cannot tell Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma, oh, he was a Christian, but Muslim, some Muslim, he may not be a practicing Muslim,
Everybody knows
maybe
that
just name is Muslim name, but he may not be Muslim, who knows what he is.
Okay.
If he is a good Muslim, he's not supposed to do that. That's a wrong thing, whatever he's doing. So you can't put everybody in the same label. 1.5 billion Muslims around the world, not 1.1 billion Muslims are terrorists,
That is a.
0.001 point maybe, bad.
Slightly going off topic. Very India-centric.
Now, from the email, in the view that they asked, there was a question: is Pakistan created as an ambition of Jinnah, or was it the British wanted to? So I thought that was pretty interesting.
I was expecting something on those lines, but nothing
so
kind of.
let me bring it to that. So I'm bringing to that line now. So what I thought, I got very excited that all these young people. Suddenly I'm the oldest. I used to be the youngest in the crowd. So I see these young people now whose parents were even after the partition, they don't have so many scars. Like all the people from Holocaust are almost dead now, so maybe people don't have those very bad memories. So I got very excited at this effort. And I said, oh wow. And I said, so I thought I have something to contribute, very, very brainy thing. And so I looked up into Corsica. There is an island of Corsica, which is a huge island. And I thought people may not have any opinion on it. So I was in some academic close friend of Corsica, I never heard about it. And I found that there is a liberation movement. And there are these fighters who are killing people, bombing, and they want to secede from France. And I didn't even care if that was the truth, because I thought France is never going to let them go. Similarly, China will never let Taiwan, Tibet go. And on the other hand, the world will never let China have Taiwan, which is their part. It's not that we are the only people, but we are the majority. And then I thought that, I remembered that in Spain has these colonies in Morocco. They will never be able to get back, Moroccans. And then Argentina, the Falkland, the Britain. So suddenly I realized that there is we feel individuals that if something is a truth, we can just fight for it, we can get it. So the Kashmir, suppose for a moment, if we think that the Kashmir totally belongs to Pakistan, let us say suppose all the wise people, the United Nations, all the Brahmin Pandits were to say it belongs to Pakistan, India will never give.
That's I was telling
so the
exactly.
So the realities are, and nobody goes, if you see the atrocities that Chinese have done, I'm practicing Buddhist by the way, very strong Buddhist. I spend most of the time now reading and studying and meditating.
Definitely education.
When I read about what the Chinese have done, if we had any shame, we would not use anything Chinese. Now we can't even brush teeth without Chinese. Even toothpaste is Chinese. Because we don't have a sense of sacrifice, but we want somebody else to do this.
Somebody else to take care of the problem.
That's acceptable.
Yeah. So my conclusion, my summary is that never try to find out who really Kashmir belongs to. And now I'll give you the positive model. This is again not known. In Åland, which is an island between Finland and Sweden, I happen to have gone there.
We belong to community or something.
So, but this Åland is part of Sweden, from 100 years ago. And they're all blonde. All means majority is blonde, Swedish people. But it is owned by Finland. Somehow Finland took it. Now Sweden is very powerful. It can beat them and take it anywhere. But when I read that, these people are happily living there, studying this very difficult Finnish language.
I would love to get some more insights from there, especially of cases where mass changes of people's mindset, people's thoughts, maybe just think back and now we can replicate it. So sorry that I don't have a institution I can engage more on. So we take very, very close to the documents, the way the community is doing it, reading the stories out there. It's pathetic when I see the media. Very poor contribution. I think yeah, we got to contribute obviously. We can't do it. What I'm doing is do that, bring in all we wish we can make these ideas more. Let something out. Yeah, fun. It's not, but it's good to remember. Break that into various
You're saying you're also noticing that there's huge mass messages being sent to reinforce those barriers.
Yeah, mass messages, especially in the city, and I think that's because of, I don't think there's so much animosity in the Burmese, like my dad said, people use art. It was actually a lot of it's like Kaka, Chacha, and in the cities, because of, I think, most of the, the way things are portrayed,
And introduce yourself beforehand.
Hi, my name is Darshan Anhad, and I felt one problem. I loved the movie because I like Kabir, but one problem I felt was the announcement did not match what was going on, and there is a problem in how we frame an issue. The announcement was about India and Pakistan. The movie was about Hindus and Muslims, and that means we are continuing to separate Muslims from Hindus, and that's wrong. Hindus and Muslims of India are Indians, and that is very important issue. The announcement should have matched that. If we wanted to talk about Hindus and Muslims, we should have said Hindus and Muslims. Otherwise, we should have been needed to say India and Pakistan, and then stick to Indians and Pakistan.
If I can speak for just one moment on that. We understand that there are more Muslims in India than there are Hindus. And I think the effort... Someone at my table said that. Is that true? No. Okay. I apologize. I just interrupt. Sometimes in ways that we are identifying. So, yeah, that's my response to that. Who else has some reflections they'd like to share?
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. My name is Malika Khan. I'm from India, Madras, India. This movie was very interesting. Kabir, I heard about the poet, but today I came to know about this message. Kabir in Arabic means big, and he was big in a sense. His message, his poetry was big. It kind of transcended, the message of Muslims, Hindus, and his message brought the people into one identity, one group. In his poetry, kind of, whether it is Pakistanis or Indians or Hindus or Muslims, they somehow get insight from his message. That really struck me that there is only one God. We all worship same God, whether we are Hindus or Muslims. So his message was trying to bring the people closer with that, rather than the divisions created by the politicians or the colonization or whatever. So that really struck me, and I'm glad I came to see this movie.
I'm particularly interested in what surprised you about the discussions you were able to have afterwards.
So hi, my name is Kabir, and in our group we spend a lot of time talking about identity, how people seek identity in different things, and we discussed this question of Hindus and Muslims versus Indians and Pakistanis, and within Hinduism the caste system, and same thing with Muslims. And it was interesting because everybody thought that it's all about identity, and the paradox of how people who preach Kabir's message about having no identity and being boundless still seek identity in that person and the medium rather than the message, which is not having identity. And that was what was interesting.
Hi, my name is Amjad. We had a good discussion with Michael, and I think the movie was great for Kabir lovers and music lovers. But as I was growing up in Pakistan, I was there until I was 24 years old. I had not heard of Kabir. So Kabir is still anonymous in Pakistan. Just because we saw it in the movie does not mean he's a household name. Just wanted to share that. Linda probably knows that well. But the other point I made in our discussion was that the crux of the problem is political, not religious. I think if the politicians were to lead us towards peace, obviously Kashmir solution, everything else will fall in place quite nicely. Business will take care of people-to-people relations, and travel and tourism and all those other good things, cricket matches and culture exchanges and all those things will happen more easily. I think the political solution is what's needed. Certainly Kabir gives us some guidance, but it's not the solution. Really, we need a political solution. Yes, ma'am.
Question in response to, you said that the political leaders have to lead us to some resolution, but you also have to lead the political leaders?
Absolutely. I think we need to, first of all, put the military back in its place. In Pakistan especially, and I think to some extent in India, we are victims of a military economy. Our masterminds in the militaries on both sides like their toys, the expensive toys, and they just like to have a potential conflict with their neighbors or with some unknown entity, and Pakistan and India have both been victims to that. The people have. People really don't care about what goes on in India or Pakistan. They want peace, they want to get on with their lives.
Thank you. Someone has a question, I believe, and then we'll go on review.
So, having watched this film several times, I felt today I was seeing it for the first time again. And as I was buzzing through the rooms with the camera, I was just hearing the different tenor of the discussions. And what struck me was how Kabir talks about identity being the root of the problem and us being bound by it. And here again, I'm hearing comments which say that, for instance, and with all due respect, that Muslims in India are Indians first. And there again, we've drawn a distinction right there. And then again, we hear another comment that the solution has to be political. But I remember Einstein saying that a problem cannot be solved with the thinking that created it. We have to go to that space where that thinking doesn't exist. As long as there are Indians and Pakistanis, I don't see how this problem will be solved. But if you're looking at the earth, like a Martian maybe that's the one time we would realize that there are no boundaries. And maybe from a Martian perspective, we come back and then talk to each other, there might be some hope. So I'm throwing this out as a challenge to the audience here. Just like the characters in the movie, and I have done this so many times, why is it that when we hear these inspiring messages, we start implanting that on other people? The politicians need awakening. The Indians, the Pakistanis, the Hindus, Muslims need awakening. How about we reflect for the next part of the evening on how I need to wake up? So to me, that's the most inspiring. When I wake up, for me, I've grown up having very negative impressions of Pakistanis. And my first Pakistani friend was in Tokyo, who was one of my best buddies, and I just couldn't believe. And in fact, this guy, he used to do research on the Vedic literature. I was like, what, you in Pakistan, you're doing this? He said, yeah, people object to it, but I love it, and I want to study this stuff. And that's when I realized that he was a human being. So to me, that was my first moment where I felt some of the stories I've been fed are stories. And maybe I have to start disbelieving and discovering for myself or experiencing people and not looking at identities and being trapped by it. So I would request that please share your personal reflection, how this affected you as a person.
My name is Madhu, and thank you. I'm really glad the discussion is coming back to the point which I felt we were gathered here for, not just to see the movie and reflect on the movie, but what do we get out of this movie and how can we apply it to our lives. In our group, we had the discussion about it. It started off with Pakistanis, or Hindustanis or Indians. But my point was exactly what Samir is saying. How can we rise above it? Who is going to take it upon their shoulders to take the message? If you're going to say governments have to talk of the two countries, it's not going to happen. Gandhiji did not put it on other people. He went himself into people to take that message. So I feel each one of us should, or however many can, maybe create the same kind of discussion among our circle of friends. For example, I could host an event at my house, show the movie, and carry on the exact same thing what has happened here, how the younger generation can break the boundaries. Not necessarily we're going to make back into one country, those boundaries can stay, but the boundaries in the minds of people. I have 30-year-old and a 25-year-old, so I'm a mother, already a grandmother. In our house, the discussion has happened over past few years because my daughter was dating a Muslim guy. There was a lot of opposition in the house. Why? On one hand, we say Hindus, Indians and Pakistanis are same people, same cultural background. Look at these people. I cannot tell if this person is from Pakistan or India. Yet, in our group, there were 3 young people, interestingly. Nitesh and I don't remember all the names, but they'll raise their hand. One of them is from Pakistan, recently has come here, and he was our lead. He said, so I raised a question, would you marry cross-culturally? Would you marry a Hindu girl or the Jain guy, Nitesh? I said, would you, being the younger generation, open-minded, would you marry a non-Hindu or specifically a Muslim girl? And they were very resistant. They said our parents would object. This is where I really feel we need to rise above it, above our religions, break those boundaries and bring these cultures together and get the positive out of it, not focus on the negatives. Why would our parents? I'm a mother. Today I say if my daughter dated a Muslim guy, I will embrace. I did meet her boyfriend 3 years back in Carnegie Mellon. I love the guy. My husband opposed it paramountly, but if she married him today, I would embrace him. And I am saying that as a mother, openly in front of all of you. So this is what needs to happen. I think some of us need to take this message, maybe plan for something like this and tell our friends to spread the word and carry this message around and force our politicians, our governments to sit together and think differently. I really feel it's not going to happen just because we think they should do it. We need to take this message to our country, to our people, to our friends and their friends and their friends and their friends. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shoaib, and I really like the question that, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, Somi, brought up about kind of like bringing it back to what can we do, and what is our reaction sort of to the movie. And I guess I can talk about myself. So one thing that really struck out for me was hearing just like kind of like a flash quote from the movie about one of the artists talking about, he was in Karachi, and he was talking about another artist that's in India, and he was like, well, you know what, artists don't have any boundaries between us, we don't have any divisions, like that's government stuff. And so that was really cool, and this is something that I shared with the group, that it was a reminder for me that, hey, you know what, like, yeah, there are artists in Indian Pakistan. And as as the first generation, like what I shared is that I have these own boundaries set up growing up. I encounter like Muslim, Indian people, Pakistani people just in the mosque. So there's all these stereotypes that I have. And it reminded me that, like, people are people, artists are everywhere. And I think that's the realization that we all need to do, is have that understanding that people are people. It comes down to empathy. And so how can you really break down those boundaries? Well, you have to start by understanding that the person on the other side of the border is a person, just like you, just like her, And I think that's a real place where everyone of us can have a real change.
Well, thank you all for sharing very much. We have a couple more comments. How about we'll just do 2 more, and then Somik is going to close for us with the attitude survey. And if for some reason you weren't able to speak here, please stick around. We'll be eating together and sharing.
Just reflecting, again, I'm Piyush from India, just reflecting on what Sonik said, what can we do? Often education has been preached as the solution to tolerance, but I think it's the right kind of education. Just more degrees, more PhD does not mean people are getting more tolerant in this world. Actually, it's exactly the opposite that's happening. The more somebody reads religious texts, the more somebody reads about this, the more polarized the society is becoming. So I think the education system needs to start rethinking about teaching tolerance, living with other people. I don't think any education system right now, at a very young age, teaches people how to live with other people. All you learn is stuff from books, and I don't think that's helping people live peacefully with other people around them. I think that's where people should start working on this problem.
My name is Nisar and I'm from India. Quickly, when I saw this email, I was really surprised that I got very excited that they are talking about Indian Pakistani getting together from the young people, being from Stanford, and I think that's where the hope is, because the older people like me and even my their generation has so many scars and historical burden, but the younger people which can take from the fresh views. I'm really excited to carry on. I hope there will be more events like that. And again, quickly, I was really scared. Recently, I've seen some emails where people are asking, have Pakistanis become separate from Indian? They are not like us anymore. I have seen this email from India. It was like a questionnaire. And what scared me was, because I read that North Korea and South Koreans don't want to get together anymore. South Koreans think that these guys don't understand anymore, their values have changed, we cannot live together. And I don't think India, Pakistan will become the same country, but I hope this separation will not become more.
Hello everybody, this is Kalpana. I'm from India and a recent graduate from Texas A&M University. I would start with the appreciation of Piyush's point. Education and wisdom, knowledge and wisdom, they are two different aspects. And I've learned from childhood, like my family has taught me that acquiring degrees is one, and gaining wisdom and tolerance to accept different viewpoints and different kinds of thinking is a different aspect altogether. As I was watching the video today, strangely now I think of it, I realized that it never occurred to me that okay, now I'm watching an Indian speak, or now comes a Pakistani who speaks, or a Hindu speak, or a Muslim speak. All through the video, the one thing that crossed my mind continuously was that given the fact that most of the people in the video were uneducated, one thing that I drew was that everybody was wise. You could see their philosophical profundity in whatever they spoke, in the kind of views they drew from different Kabir ke dohe or whatever. So constantly one point that occurred to me was, we are, as a generation, going distant. We have traveled miles across and traveled to a land where it is difficult, okay, whatever, that you acquire growing up in a culture such as India or Pakistan. So this video has inspired me to equip myself with such knowledge that comes from different dohe or different scriptures or whatever, and start by small means, start spreading the same around, because eventually what matters is not material possession for happiness, but the wisdom that we carry forward into our daily lives, breaking the barriers in our minds and hearts and accepting everybody equally and spreading love and joy across, which brings us to happiness. So this is the lesson that I learned, and this is the inspiration I drew from this video today. Thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity.
Linda wants to say.
Just know it's almost over. I can talk about it. I just realized that I'm missing an opportunity here that I don't want to quite miss. I teach here, and when want me to be on the camera?
Awesome.
And so what I wanted to say is that I work in India, and as things really heated up from the late 80s through the 90s and the 2000s in terms of the resurgence of communal politics and hatred and violence, I felt that as somebody who's teaching about religion of South Asia here, and as the only person who is, that I needed to address that. And I started a course, which I've done a few times, every few years, called Hindus and Muslims in South Asia. And so it's coming up this spring, and I always change my courses because otherwise I bore myself to tears. So I'm in the process of thinking about it, and I'd really like to invite and request anybody who's interested, especially in the Stanford community, but also, community. If you have any requests or suggestions as to things that you'd like to see happen in a course called Hindus and Muslims in South Asia, it's historical, it's cultural, it's political, and there's so much that one could choose from that I always suffer acute agonies in terms of choosing what to do in 9.5 weeks. But if somebody wanted to lend some inspiration to the way to handle that this spring here at Stanford, I would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kiran Kumar. I'm from India. So I like the fact that this kind of event is happening somewhere in the world. So, but I would like this to happen places where this problem belongs. So we should look for ways for this kind of events to happen in India and Pakistan at an appropriate time. First, peace has to happen between these two countries.
When are you going there?
Sorry.
When are you going there?
Whenever I go, I would like to take this.
If you're going there, please let us know. My support is there. I'm sure a lot of people will support.
Yes.
Anything you need, tell us.
Sure.
I just want to add a quick comment. My name is Ali Kaparia. I'm from Karachi, Pakistan. I've been living over here for about 2 years now. I can give you kind of a very fresh perspective on what Pakistanis think now. Just one thing that I would like to add is that before coming into this, I did not hate Indians or Hindus, and after this, I still don't hate them. So that's one aspect aside. But one other thing that the title was Beyond Borders, and I really like the film. I think it's very well done, and it's very ambitious, and it's very brave. However, one thing that it seems like it was aiming to hit the conflict, and it did not hit the source of the conflict. The source of the conflict is not from the ideology. I understand the other point of losing identity and selflessness, and we've got a lot of that ideology in Pakistan too. However, something very important to understand is that everyone over here is amazed by the fact that people know Kabir in Pakistan. I don't know Kabir, and a lot of people, I'm really sorry to say, do not care. You need to take that as a problem. In fact, instead of saying that, oh well, there are no Kabir, so yes, whatever. So the point that I'm trying to get at is that there's one way to go ahead and say you're wrong and you need to fix yourself, and there's another way to approach a problem through a mutual benefit way. Something that I saw on the TV was that there was this one Turkish businessman, very religious Muslim, and and during a very long speech he said, jihad is not good for business. And that's something that we need to learn from. We need to do business. We need to we don't need to go ahead and say, well, you're wrong, your religion is wrong, or you get it changed. What you just need to do is, what do they like and what do you like? They like food, you like food, mutual understanding, make each other food. Alright? So that's the kind of stuff that we want to do. However, the thing that I'm trying to get at is that a lot of us over here, we really didn't want to kill each other before we came into this place. Alright? So what we need to do is either a movement that promotes business, and like we need to approach it in a more mutual understanding kind of way, instead of approaching it in a way that that is so difficult, like losing selfness, like that's so difficult. How many people do you think you're gonna get to, like, okay, I'll do it, fine, for 1 week maybe, but yeah, anyways, but that's what I was trying to say.
This will be the last comment.
I'm Srinath, I'm from India. I really agree with this guy's comment that we need business, and I think the main cause of this conflict is business. Why do you think this conflict drags on for 60 years? Because politicians show this as a cause and they make money out of it. There is a war, they bring unnecessary weapons. Why do India or Pakistan, which are very poor countries, nuclear weapons? They're creating business. So if any all the Bofors or any other equipment they buy, they don't really use it in a war. They just need kickbacks from each and every politician needs money. That's the business that's going on in India and Pakistan. And in Pakistan, that is more active and more commercial and more business-like. In India, it's like it's more democratic. So people across from all the spectrum are involved in the business of looting people.
Thank you so much. As we draw to a close, the Pakistani speaker talked about food and business. So food is coming up. Any guesses? I know some of you know this, but in an event with Indians and Pakistanis, what do you think the cuisine is? Chinese. Chinese. We have Chinese food for you. And getting on to business, we can just put it this for another minute. It's really fascinating that the last two speakers talked about business. I was privy to this conference on economics where the chief economic advisors of all the South Asian countries gathered, whereas we're in Stanford, and I was amazed to see how friendly they were with each other. And one of the things that came up was a study where they tried to figure out why Pakistan doesn't get tea from India. And so they first asked, well, why did you get tea? So they said, well, India has a Kashmir problem. We don't want tea from you. Okay, get it from Sri Lanka. Then the story started coming out that there were business interests where they said invested very heavily in Kenya, and so to protect that, anytime any trade talks came up, they would bring up Kashmir and kill all such possibilities. So there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, but I think there's something else at play, at least in the